The crowd roared, Trump was back. Macomb County, Michigan was a sea of red hats and fervent cheers. It was a homecoming of sorts, a return to the heartland that had propelled him to victory in 2024. 100 days into his second term, Trump was on a mission to reclaim his narrative, to drown out the doubters and the naysayers with the adulation of his base. The rally was classic Trump part victory lap, part grievance-fueled tirade, and a whole lot of showmanship. He crowed about his accomplishments, lambasted his enemies, and painted a picture of an America on the cusp of greatness, all thanks to his leadership. The message was clear: he was in charge, he was making America great again, and anyone who stood in his way would be steamrolled. The familiar refrain of promises made, promises kept echoed through the arena, but beneath the bluster and bravado, a different reality was unfolding. The country was deeply divided, the economy teetered on the edge, and Trump's approval ratings were sinking faster than a stone in a lake. The man who had promised to unite the nation had only succeeded in driving it further apart. The question now was, could he hold on to his base and his power in the face of mounting opposition? Trump's economic agenda, a whirlwind of tariffs and trade wars, had left many Americans reeling. Businesses, particularly in manufacturing states like Michigan, were feeling the pinch. The cost of raw materials had skyrocketed, and consumers were facing higher prices on everything from cars to groceries. The president touted his tariffs as a way to protect American jobs and bring back manufacturing from overseas. He railed against China, Mexico, and the European Union, accusing them of unfair trade practices and stealing American jobs. His message resonated with some, particularly those who felt left behind by globalization, but for many others the tariffs were a disaster. Farmers, who relied on exports, saw their markets dry up. Small businesses struggled to cope with the rising cost of goods, and economists warned that the tariffs were hurting, not helping, the American economy. Immigration, a signature issue for Trump since the day he announced his candidacy, remained at the forefront of his agenda. He had doubled down on his hardline approach, ramping up deportations, building his wall, and implementing policies that were widely condemned as cruel and inhumane. The president argued that his tough stance was necessary to protect American jobs, keep out criminals, and preserve American culture. He painted a picture of an America under siege, overrun by undocumented immigrants, who were draining resources and threatening public safety. But critics accused him of fear-mongering and demonizing immigrants. They pointed to the human cost of his policies, the families torn apart, the children separated from their parents, and the asylum seekers turned away at the border. In a move that shocked even his most ardent supporters, Trump played a video at the rally. It showed images of deportations, of undocumented immigrants being loaded onto planes and flown back to their home countries. The images were jarring, the message unmistakable. This is what happens when you cross Donald Trump. The crowd cheered. They had come to see a show of strength, a demonstration of Trump's unwavering commitment to his campaign promises. And that is exactly what they got. But for many others, the video was deeply disturbing, a chilling reminder of the dark side of Trump's America. The video was just the latest example of Trump's penchant for using fear and division to rally his base. He seemed to revel in the controversy, the outrage, the attention. For him, it was all part of the show, a way to solidify his grip on power. Section 5. A chorus of critics. The backlash to Trump's rally was swift and fierce. Democrats condemned his rhetoric as divisive and dangerous. Human rights groups denounced his immigration policies as inhumane. And even some Republicans expressed unease at the president's tone and tactics. The media, which Trump had long branded as the enemy of the people, had a field day. They dissected his every word, analyzed his every move, and highlighted the growing disconnect between his claims of success and the reality on the ground. The president's approval ratings, already low, continued to plummet. Polls showed that a majority of Americans disapproved of his handling of the economy, immigration, and foreign policy. His base remained loyal, but it was becoming increasingly clear that he was losing the support of the broader public. The crowd in Macomb County may have been overwhelmingly supportive, but out in the real world, the reaction to Trump's policies was far more mixed. In Michigan, a state that had swung narrowly in his favor in the 2024 election, the president's tariffs were a major source of anxiety. Farmers worried about losing their livelihoods. Business owners fretted about rising costs, and consumers grumbled about higher prices. The economic optimism that had characterized the early days of Trump's presidency had given way to a sense of uncertainty and fear. Even among Trump's supporters, there were signs of unease. Some acknowledged that the tariffs were causing pain, but argued that it was a necessary price to pay for long-term economic gain. Others expressed concern about the president's rhetoric and his attacks on his opponents. Trump's rally in Michigan was a stark reminder of the deep divisions that plagued American society. The country was split along political, racial, and ideological lines. Trust in institutions was at an all-time low, and the ability to engage in civil discourse seemed to have vanished altogether. Trump had campaigned on a promise to make America great again, but his presidency had only served to exacerbate the country's problems. His policies had alienated allies, emboldened adversaries, and sown chaos both at home and abroad. The rally was a microcosm of this divided nation. On one side were Trump's supporters, who cheered his every word and believed that he was fighting for them. On the other side were his detractors, who viewed him as a threat to democracy and the rule of law. Trump's presidency had been marked by a constant state of conflict. He had clashed with Democrats, Republicans, the media, the judiciary, and even members of his own administration. He seemed to relish confrontation, to thrive on chaos. His relationship with Congress was particularly fraught. He had repeatedly attacked Democrats, accusing them of being obstructionists and traitors, but he had also alienated members of his own party, who were increasingly uncomfortable with his behavior and his policies. The courts had also become a battleground. Trump had appointed 2 conservative justices to the Supreme Court, tilting the balance of power in his favor. But he had also faced numerous legal challenges to his policies, particularly his immigration crackdown. As Trump wrapped up his rally in Michigan, it was clear that he was gearing up for a fight. He had already set his sights on the 2028 election, and he was determined to win a 3rd term, an unprecedented feat in American history. But the road ahead was fraught with peril. The country was deeply divided, his approval ratings were low, and he faced a growing number of challenges, both domestic and foreign. Whether he could overcome these obstacles and hold on to power remained to be seen. One thing was certain: Trump was not going anywhere without a fight. He would continue to rail against his enemies, to attack the media, and to push the boundaries of presidential power. The question was, how much more could the country and the world take?